Hey there everyone, this is Jeremy, the Music Andy, and we're here today to talk about You Belong There from Daniel Rossen. Member of Grizzly Bear, born in Los Angeles, California, Daniel is now taking his talents solo. This is his debut solo album. He's going to be using genres such as chamber folk, progressive folk, psychedelic folk, avant folk. This is an album from start to finish it is a very sweeping thing. It is not just sweeping in the sense of the sounds that's going on or the progressions that are going on or the words that are being displayed very poetically, but also just in the emotions that are being taken place on this album. So let's just start talking about these tracks right now. It's a Passage opens up this album, and immediately there's a very grand, full acoustic guitar, very bright in its tones, being the center stage of this track. It's a staple sound that's going to be on this album all the way through, but it's going to be mixed in different ways, and I think that the guitar work on this entire album is executed perfectly. Daniel is pushing his guitar to the absolute limits. I think that he is doing it in a way that is very progressive. These transitions are done in a very remarkable way. I think that he can either get you, again, with this very complex nature of songwriting, or he can just get you in a very deep, infectious groove that kind of stuns you into the sound that's going on and all the flooding instruments around it. Going back to this track though, once the vocals start kind of kicking into this track really starts tying everything together. Melodies are full of sorrow, mystery, bewilderment, and the way that the vocals are just executed, again, they're very bright, they're very complementary to the guitar work that's on this. I think that, again, this is an incredible opener. And to complement the drum work on this, Chris Bear from Grizzly Bear as well is on this side by side with Daniel on this. And I think that Chris is going to do a good job on this album, being very supportive. He's going to tie in with all the instruments and kind of help elevate them. But at times he's also going to steal the show and kind of draw attention towards him and let Daniel be the more rhythmic section of this album or the track or the song, whatever's going on at the moment. Shadow in the Frame is the next track, and this one kind of seems to be a fan favorite, and if that's the case, I absolutely can't blame you. It's a very dynamic track. The guitar is kind of galloping this track, pushing the momentum forward, even though that it is a more slow, reserved, kind of natured track. When I was talking about Chris kind of taking center stage and really stealing the show from Daniel at points, I think that this track kind of showcases that off. The guitar is a lot more of the one kind of keeping everything contained, being the one in the pocket, and the drums are the ones that are more explosive and dynamic in nature. I think that the ending of this track really is mind-blowing. I think that it's full of excitement. It's very explosive. It really has the payoff. You know, it does it well. You Belong There. This is the self-titled track. And this is a track that has a very kind of big build-up going on. And then it kind of goes into this spacey, floaty guitar. And they're going to kind of wrestle between each other. In the atmosphere, it's going to be very floaty, very spacey, like I said, from that guitar. And the ground is just going to be kind of shattering, and just the core is completely faulting and just breaking apart. And it's a very dynamic track. It's a very contrasting track as well. I think it does a good job of being a nice little transitional piece. I think it's a little weird to use the self-titled track as a transitional piece, but again, it still does it well, so there's nothing really odd going on here. Then we have the next track, and this is probably my favorite track on this one. Unpeopled Spaces. I think that this is a beautiful dance of a song. I think that this guitar is extremely moving, even on my first listen, up to my 8th listen. Now, doing this review on it, it just blows me away every time I hear it. I think that the initial punch of this track kind of alerts you, and then Daniel kind of lures you in and holds you tight with his vocals. There's a steady clicks on the drums, and then it's just progressions galore on this track. I could go on and 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 on, but I'm going to keep it simple. This is probably one of the best tracks that I've heard this entire year. There's excitement around every single corner on this one. It has a little something for everybody. Just absolutely breathtaking on this track. Celia is very haunting. It's almost like you're being slowly pulled in by quicksand. And this track will kind of let you loose and make it seem like you're being freed from it again, only to start pulling you down once again to start drowning in the quicksand. I think Daniel here melodically on his vocals is just absolutely stellar. I'm not usually a fan of slower tracks that are kind of more reserved in nature and having the main focus be on the vocals, but Daniel does a good job of holding his own, using his guitar as a very supportive tool on this one, but again, the vocals just stand on their own very well. For the most part, this album has kind of been letting it all hang out. There's been a lot of progressions going on, a lot of transitions that are very complex. Things have been kind of in your face, but again, this one hasn't been really letting it hang out. But speaking of letting it all hang out, here's the next track, Tangle. Tangle is going to be a track that is going to be a completely off-balance listen. This is where the avant folk kind of comes into play on this album. Again, you're going to be off balance. There's going to be no predictability going on here, and nothing is going to have a rhyme or reason, but everything is just going to work on this track. I think that this track is a huge risk. It has no right just being placed on this album, but it works so well. In this album so far, the momentum has been kind of being pushed. Everything has been very fresh and unique from track to track to track, each one of them having their own personality, and again, just adding their own flavor to the album. And this one added a lot of personality and flavor to the album, for me at least. It is very experimental as a listen. I'll Wait for Your Visit kind of has us returning back to the more softer side of this album after the chaotic nature of Tangle. And I think that it does a very good job, but I'm going to say something that may not make a lot of sense to people. But going back to the previous point where I was talking about the ball kept on moving and keeping it rolling with the ideas being very fresh, this track is a very good track. Don't get me wrong. If this is just a track that was just released as a single, I would say that's a good track. But on this album, it kind of feels a little too safe, especially coming off of the track Tangle. I was having a lot of fun listening to this album just get bigger and bigger and bigger in sound and ideas and just takes and concepts and just the way that it was going to present itself and be as a whole album. And then this track just kind of had it more contained and feel like it's going to go more in a regressing, more in a reserved, safe side. Keeper and Kin, though, is the next track on this one, and it kind of got rid of that entire idea that we were going to start regressing and things were going to be safe. I think that this track does a good job of being very unique and very fresh. This is very euphoric feeling with the, I don't know if it's a synth or a guitar that's waving into the air, but again, it is super euphoric feeling going on. Then you have this cello. I believe it's a cello that's being cut into this one, and just it adding the bass onto this is very nice. It's adding to that chamber side of this album that I was talking about at the beginning. I like this direction of this track. This is keeping that idea, the concept of the album, and moving it into a bigger and bigger idea of what I was just talking about. And again, I think that Daniel's voice and guitar on this track are absolutely killer. Chris on this does a very good job of speeding this track up and then also pulling it down and reserving it. He's kind of changing the tempo on it. Very moving track. I love the dynamics on this one. The vocals are a little bit more on the reserve side for me, but the ending completely blew me away, and just, I completely forgive the vocals because of the ending on this. The last one feels kind of like a jam session from the band, and it almost feels like a track that would be on Like Clockwork from Queens of the Stone Age. At least for me personally, that's what it sounded like. There's so much dread and despair laced into these lyrics and just melodically how it's being presented. It really does feel like Josh from Queens of the Stone Age is singing on this one. Just the way that the transitions are being done, and also the guitar playing on this as well. If I didn't ever hear Like Clockwork, I would think that this is an incredible track, and I still do think that it's an incredible track. I just don't think it's as unique because I've heard that, and it's just my brain making the comparison, and sometimes my brain's stupid, and this might be one of those times. Please let me know if you think that this sounds anything like Queens of the Stone Age. I really think, especially on the vocals, the way that they're layered, and the way, again, it's super melancholy, and there's so much dread and despair and like self-pity on this. I think it is a fantastic track, though. And before I go off of this one, I also want to say that even though that the guitar and vocals do sound like something from Queens of the Stone Age, again, especially on the transitions, the moments that when it kind of reaches that boiling point absolutely do not sound like Queens of the Stone Age. This does feel absolutely unique to the album, and it ties in with the album greatly. Repeat the Pattern is a track that almost sounds like a Sufjan Stevens track on the initial vocals that are on this. They're very bouncy, they're very boyish, it's kind of upbeat but sad in nature the way that it's progressing. And then you move into this fiery string section that just feels very, I hate saying the word, but it's very epic in its sound. And then it just stops, and then it goes back to like the boyish vocals on this. And I think that it is a very fun, funny, carefree transition, and I like it as an ending on this album. It kind of adds again to the unique feeling of this album. I think that not a lot of people are talking about this track in particular. That's probably because it is the ending track. A lot of the ending tracks don't get a lot of notice because some people don't make it all the way to the end of an album, which is a shame. But I think that this kind of tied it all together, and even as a track on its own, it still delivers a nice gut punch to the listener. Honestly, I'm blown away by this album. I know that a lot of people have been waiting for this album for a long time. I just never got the memo that we were waiting for this album. I woke up one day, I saw that this album was like being passed around by everybody and it was getting a lot of praise, and that so many people have been waiting so long for this to drop. And again, it just kind of stumbled into my hands, and it was a fantastic listen. I think Daniel delivered on every single part, both on his guitar, on his vocals, and just the overall songwriting capabilities that he has on this album. He took a lot of big risks, he took a lot of complex songwriting, but he still presented it in a very entertaining, interesting, and enjoyable way. Each track feels like it has its own flavor. I'm Sorry, I'll Wait for Your Visit, you are a good track. You just feel like kind of like a blender piece of all of the tracks, kind of Frankenstein monster put together and put on the album. But again, it is still a good track. Daniel, please do not stop with just this one album. Don't do one solo album and then just walk away from it because you did something fantastic, which you have every right to do, but please don't do it. I'm going to give this 9.2 frying pans out of 10. I'm sorry, Soul Glo. You were my album of the year, and I really thought that you were going to make it out the whole way, but you got to move for Daniel. He's got the throne right now. What did you think of this album? What albums would you like me to review in the future? Please leave a comment below and let me know. Subscribe if you like the content. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Please check out this album.